What do we see when we watch a film? When we sit down in total darkness to observe a director's vision? The warm glow of the screen? A rectangle that serves as a portal to a singular or collective experience? Of these virtual worlds, perhaps the single most explored is that of the city, with its constantly evolving depiction of our modern lives, a physical concrete canvas on which to chart humanity's development. Within the city lies a fundamentally wide scope of spaces, from the level of the flaneur, or as the poet and critic Charles Baudelaire puts it, for who it becomes an immense source of enjoyment to establish his dwelling in the throng, in the ebb and flow, the bustle, the fleeting and the infinite, all the way up to the level of the voyeur, able to see the city itself from a vantage point. Linked to this idea of the eternal city trapped within the screen is, naturally, time. What do we see in a film concerning past events? The happenings themselves, or simply the present depiction of them, a recollection? Pavel Pawlikowski's 2013 film, Ida, portrays the story of two women, a young nun and her aunt, discovering both their relationship to each other and their past in a post-World War II Poland. As the central character Ida explores the unnamed city, a unique phenomenon occurs that transcends the boundaries of the screen and thus the supposed limits of the medium itself. In a world where, as Edward Sawyer notes, the cartographic representation of space is slowly becoming more and more important than the space itself, the intimate moments Ida experiences throughout her world are made poignant in the sense that we are, parallel to the protagonist, breaking into the hidden side of the city. That is to say, in an epistemological sense, the shifting cultures and forgotten memories which are fundamentally unmappable. Ida, however, is a film that raises the question, if we have no memory of our past, is it possible to form links with new experiences? The protagonist cannot attach a familiar recollection or idea with the decidedly alien urban landscape which she is traversing. Ida walks the streets as a flaneur, while we, the voyeurs, gaze upon her struggle, privileged in our realization that she cannot look upon herself self-reflectively within the confines of the city. As Juliana Bruno says, layers of cultural memory, densities of hybrid histories, emotional transport are all housed by film's spatial practice of cognition. Haptic space offers vehicles for psychospatial journeys. To continue exploring Bruno's idea, shot analysis may prove useful. The emphasis that the director places on spatial boundaries and awareness within Ida is shown best within this beautifully framed shot of Ida and her aunt wander by a field as the young woman prays to her god by a grave. Immediately, the most striking aspect of this scene are the vast swaths of emptiness that define the image. What may be seen as simple negative space can also be interpreted as a visual metaphor for negligence, of the fractured past which Ida is attempting to painfully piece together. The heads of the two women are separated by the focal point of the line of the field in the background. Physically, the landscape itself is separating these two lost souls. Ida, a woman of the cloth, remains under the ground, dirty and supposedly wild, whereas Wanda ironically is situated among the fresh air and clear space despite her muddied conscience. The most important takeaway from shots such as these is that Pawlikowski decides to prioritise place over person throughout the film. There is a constant focus on patterns and objects that make up the fabric of the world Ida inhabits that is reminiscent of film cameras and photography. Matilda Mroz makes the assessment that Ida is characterised by the latter in three ways: the black and white filter over every shot, the focus on photographs within the narrative as clues, and the recurring motif of windows and entrances of light. The film acts as a living, breathing photograph, not only in the sense that it is, literally, a rapid montage of still pictures that lend the impression of movement, but in the sense that the function of the photograph, that is, a visual way to conjure the past, is extended beyond the piece of paper, propelled into the modern age of filmmaking. Crucially, however, the looking forward that the film intends to do mechanically, through the technological innovation of media, contrasts with the intrinsic nature of the photograph itself. John Berger's About Looking is an incredibly useful lens through which to view Ida and the aforementioned distinction. He notes, normally photographs are used in a very unilinear way, whereas memory works radially, that is to say, with an enormous number of associations all leading to the same event. The camera makes reality atomic, manageable and opaque. This difference in temporality is key in understanding the turmoil at the heart of the film. Although Ida uses Wanda's old photos as a way to begin accepting the death of her parents in a linear sequence of ensuing events, the city and the country that she lives in now take on a wider, multifaceted meaning. Every street and building is now tainted by the past which she never knew, a mimetic form of diegesis which has expanded past her immediate perception. Likewise, the audience, acutely aware of the horrors of World War II which are subtly peppered throughout the narrative, is now able to view Ida and Wanda's relationship in an equally radial and temporally distorted way as it becomes entrenched in real, recognisable events. There is no way to discuss memory in Ida while not mentioning hauntology. Derrida's argument that the past is always returning in some form to haunt the present is expanded upon by Mark Fisher's statement that the future exists as a haunting as well, a virtuality that conditions motivations and cultures. Ida's search for her identity is the future summoning her to explore the past, in the same vein as Wanda's quest for justice and inner peace, which is drawn to a brutal close. The cinematography of the film itself continues this somewhat self-reflexive notion of time, as shown in the switch from formalism to realism. There is always something very earthly about most shots. Not only is the camera placed in almost hidden, erratic locations, but the subjects are physically closer to the bottom of the frame, and thus appear grounded. The biggest source of irony in this context is the ending, which taken on its own with its shaky handheld camera and Ida's steely gaze, should represent her newfound self, following her experience of sex and drugs. Instead, the effect is somewhat surreal, haunting in the way that Pawlikowski has decided to immediately subvert the established conventions of the film. As such, it becomes clear that Ida is a film of contrasting states, realism and surrealism, linear and radial depictions of time, past and future influencing the same memories. Pawlikowski's own upbringing, split between Poland, England and Germany, can be interpreted in these divides, transforming the film itself into an example of hauntology, and the future spurring the present, and by extension past into action. Just like the action of recalling a memory, the film is in a constant state of flux. It seems natural to want to analyse Ida through a singular perspective. The film is incredibly vast in both its content and the methods it uses to convey said content, so one of space, time or memory should be more than enough for a video essay. Upon spending time delving into its intricacies, however, it becomes apparent that Ida's interpretations of all these things are inextricably intertwined in fundamental ways. Space becomes a canvas for time, which forms a basis for memory, which ingrains itself into space. This is what we see when we observe film. Everything acting in unison, a complex archival machine of spectacle and recollection.